What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I'm going to be talking about what we all absolutely love and something we're extremely well known for. Builds. For over 5 years, we've been making builds that focus on both role-playing and the statistical side of things when it comes to a handful of games. We started out with Skyrim, and since then we've also made loads of Fallout New Vegas builds, and as you likely noticed, a lot of Fallout 4 ones. We even made some Witcher 3 builds and did builds for Deus Ex and Mass Effect while we were playing the games around the time of their release dates. Anyways, the point is, we're obsessed with builds. And just like many of you have been wondering, we've also been thinking, how are we going to make builds for Fallout 76? Fallout 76 is going to be entirely online. It's a Fallout game like no other, where every other person is a real player, where there's always some survival elements at play, and you have new changes like tradable perk cards instead of a perk chart. There's a story, but it's delivered through robots, terminals, and holotapes, and there aren't any human characters in the traditional sense. How do you roleplay? How will characters be created? Are cool builds even possible? Well, today I'm here to discuss how builds can work for Fallout 76. We'll all have to wait and see just how well they turn out and what parts become the most important and how we end up structuring things, but what I aim to do in this video is use sections of one of our Fallout 4 builds as a base to then explain what could possibly be different in Fallout 76, what could be the same, and generally how it could all work. So obviously any good build starts off with an introduction explaining what the character is all about, and then we hop straight into the backstory, after which we explain the basic values of the character and how to go about role-playing. I think this role-playing area will be quite strange for Fallout 76 because the role-playing will be somewhat reduced by the lack of characters and therefore interactions in the game. If there aren't any human characters to talk to, how exactly do we roleplay? Well, I think the statistical side of things and the actual playstyle setups may be more important in Fallout 76, but we'll see. That said, the thing you have to consider is that a lot of role-playing is done in your head anyway. I mean, backstories in general are created in your head, outside of the in-game world. Sure, they use established lore, but you don't actually live through them. These backstories are then used to dictate in-game choices, so the backstory is of course quite important for role-playing. Now, with Fallout 76, there's actually still room to make awesome backstories for characters, but we still need to get creative. Now, unlike Fallout 4, where we have a voiced protagonist with a kind of pre-established story, such as the male character being in the military and the female having a law degree, Fallout 76 appears to be slightly more vague. For example, in Fallout 4, you could make evil characters, but the main story tended to push you into more caring dialogue options. To feel somewhat evil, you had to find workarounds in the role-playing, such as the idea that your character was pretending to be nice to mislead others. Then with the Nuka World DLC, you could become a lot more evil, but the switch felt so sudden. It was easy enough for us to rationalize, but the role-playing in the game could have been made a lot smoother. In Fallout 76, however, we may not feel stupid doing evil things. For example, if we want to, we can team up with friends and make raider factions, pillaging and attacking others. That sounds pretty evil to me. We can engage in PvP and nuke the settlements of others. Again, this may not be highly incentivized and could put bounties on your head, but there's definitely options to be bad. Todd Howard said that if you see a raider gang, they're going to be real players. Now, obviously, there's a lot of room to be a good person as well, helping other players to kill monsters, perhaps even offering your services to them as a trade for resources. You could specialize in a certain role, such as being the best settlement builder, the best chef, the best medic, or the best person to go into irradiated areas to gather resources for your group. Imagine even being the best sniper around, and offering assassination services to passive players. For example, if someone wasn't into PvP, but was into gathering the best resources and building crazy settlements, but then some meanie nuked their creation, they might want revenge, but be too weak at combat to do so. Well, you could offer to be their hitman, taking out the player that wronged them for a resource reward. What I'm saying is, there's still going to be opportunities to roleplay. We can explain how to act in quests, how to act towards other players, and what a character's stance is on settlements, PvP, trading, and so on. We've also been told that there are still quests and choices to make, and I hope after the complaints of Fallout 4, Bethesda does include more choices. Obviously, it's still going to be kind of hard to be evil in the traditional sense, as there are no non-player humans in the game to terrorize, but perhaps there are other questionable choices that we can make. Maybe in one quest, you can choose to free a bunch of vicious suspicious creatures or alien-like beings who have been locked away in a government research facility. Who knows? Now, the role-playing will be somewhat limited for sure, but hopefully you can start thinking of some possibilities just from a few of the examples I've created. Now, to further facilitate role-playing, we want to match it up to a backstory. Like Fallout 4, some backstories still have to be pre-war. Other backstories will actually have to be like Fallout 3, where your character grew up inside a vault. Personally, I do prefer post-apocalyptic stories, such as those possible in Fallout New Vegas, where you can have a character who's lived their whole life in the wasteland long after the Great War. But we won't be able to do that in Fallout 76. This isn't the biggest deal, as if you've watched our Fallout 4 builds before, you'd know that sensational pre-war backstories can be written. However, any characters with really cool, extensive backstories will have to be older people in Fallout 76. This is because the game is set 25 years after the Great War, and you've been in Vault 76 the whole time, waiting to exit for Reclamation Day. For example, imagine if we have a hitman character like the one mentioned. By day, he was a surgeon, and by night, he used his surgical precision to kill people for money. He was put into Vault 76 due to his crazy medical skills, but nobody knew he was also a trained killer. He will finally emerge from the vault into the wasteland, and we'd invest in the right stats and perks to give him the ability to heal himself and others. However, we'd then make him really good at stealth and shooting people from far away. Then he could act out the previously mentioned role-playing fun, where you actually offer hitman services to players who want revenge, but aren't strong enough to do it themselves or simply don't want to get a bounty themselves. This character build would be a grizzly old dude in his 50s or even 60s. He could have kept himself insanely fit by doing bodyweight training inside the vault, and he would have a rough grey beard and just kick ass. Or he could have lost all of his old skills, which makes sense because then you actually need to play the game and develop those skills back. You could actually imagine he has a cool old man voice instead of in Fallout 4 where you had to always have the voice of the voiced protagonist. So as you can see, we can still get creative with the circumstances, but it won't be as easy. Being in the vault for 25 years before emerging, many younger characters will need to have lived all or a lot of their life inside the vault. Here we would talk about what kind of person they were, what experiences they had in the vault, and what kind of characters they interacted with. Maybe they joined some gang with other teenage kids in some sort of tunnel snakes situation. Again, I prefer the freedom of New Vegas, but I'm just telling you what we have to work with here. Some people thought good backstories wouldn't be possible for Fallout 4, but I think we managed pretty well, so hopefully we should be able to work with Fallout 76 too. In a nutshell though, here's the thing. We can still work with backstory and role-playing options in Fallout 76, but I do imagine that this aspect of builds won't be as intense as previous Fallout games. In a Fallout 4 build, we then move on to the factions and quests section. Now in Fallout 76, don't expect a lot here. If there are main quest choices, we'll probably let you know which ones to pick, and if people tend to make in-game factions themselves, we'll let you know what kinds of ones to join. All in all, this section will kind of blend into the backstory and role-playing section just like it did with our Fallout 4 builds. But what's next? Well, it's the stats and perks section. I think we might also add an explicit playstyle section onto this like we have with our Skyrim builds. Again, until I play the game, I can't know for sure, but more or less in this section, we talk about special stats and how we're going to grow them over time and what perk cards to choose as we go along. You see, from what we can tell, you don't actually start with a pool of special stats to allocate. This is kind of annoying because I like being able to min-max characters. For example, starting with 10 endurance and 10 strength but 4 intelligence, or 10 luck and 10 agility but only 4 endurance. Mixes like this were fun, but now it looks like we have 1 in everything, and then we get to increase a special stat each time we level up and then pick from a choice of perk cards. Either way, however it exactly works, this section will be completely fine for Fallout 76 builds. We'll take you through exactly what to do with your stats, what perks to pick and why, how your character turns out, and how this all impacts your overall playstyle as you become what we deem an endgame character build. It's all pretty straightforward here, and like I said, this kind of stats section might be more of the focus in Fallout 76 builds compared to the role-playing. Time will tell. Now, instead of putting a settlements building section after the gear section like in our Fallout 4 builds, we may actually talk about it in the playstyle section. So the playstyle part may involve notes on running mini businesses as well as settlement building, as they will be involved in the playstyle of some builds. We'd go over if you build settlements, what kind of ones you build, and so on. Do you make traps? Do you sell things? How do you gather resources? How do you survive easily? Does your character set up a robot vendor at a hub to generate income for you? You've got your in-combat playstyles, but there would be an out-of-combat playstyle for many builds too. And from what we've been told, it seems with settlement building, you can save blueprints of things too, so you can more easily rebuild them them if they get destroyed. Perhaps we'll outline some good settlement setup ideas too. If there's animal or robot companions, I think we'd mention them here too, as they would become almost like a feature of the playstyle. Anyways, after we have run through the backstory and roleplaying, the special stats, essential perk cards, and the playstyle both in and out of combat involving settlement building, it would probably be time for the exact gear loadout. The gear section should be straightforward, like always. Not a lot of changes here. We'll tell you what gear to get and how to get it. We'll also tell you how to upgrade it and why. We give you your weapon and armor loadouts, talk about what aid you'll need, like chems and stim packs, and if it's not already obvious, how they work in the playstyle. We may also go over the exact resources you'll want to carry and seek out. Now, we did see some awesome weapons and power armor sets in the Fallout 76 footage released so far, so I'm really keen to try those out. One thing I talked about in our Fallout 76 13 questions we want answered video was the whole concept of unique weapons. There may not actually be unique weapons and armor in the game. I mean, there might be as unique quest rewards and so on, but I wonder how unique they'll feel if all the other players have them too. I'm still hoping for truly unique gear, and there's a chance we get some. The only thing that I do know for sure though is that we were told in the Making of Fallout 76 documentary that the legendary gear system is back. No one explicitly said there are 100% no uniques, but I imagine a lot of the gear we'll be using will be legendary versions of strong weapons. We might actually make a legendary farming guide for Fallout 76 to help you locate randomized powerful weapons that fit perfectly with the character builds we've created. Like I said before, Bethesda knows that players can't just unlock all the unique weapons and be done with the game if they randomize everything, but I still hope we still see uniques alongside the legendary system. It was mentioned that there would be events going on in the game that you can go and take part in, so maybe there's some epic boss battles where there's actually a small chance of the enemy dropping a true unique. Am I being hopeful regarding uniques? Let me know what you think. But overall, I imagine there will still be lots of awesome armor and weapons that you can set up with in Fallout 76, and the gear section should more or less be the same. And that concludes this discussion video on how builds could work in Fallout 76. What do you think? I feel like we have to expect them to be different to previous Fallout builds, just because Fallout 76 will be an experience like no other Fallout game. But at the same time, if you really think about it, many of the elements of our Fallout builds will remain intact. I'm really excited to see just how creative we can get with Fallout 76 builds here at FudgeMuppet, and once we get the ability to use mods later after launch, who knows what's possible. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it thoroughly, and definitely subscribe for all of our upcoming Fallout 76 coverage. It's going to be a lot more than just character builds. Social media links are in the description. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.